our next speaker up tonight is Steve Nemeth. He was in the Marines. Let's give him a big hand for coming out tonight.
You might not want to put that on me. I tend to be kind of loud. No, I am a Marine.
That's the only way it's going to come out.
He's not really a Marine guy.
That's right, was it?
Rafael's not really a Marine guy.
That's not fair.
We're not picking on him right now. So, didn't realize we were telling our stories. I had a whole speech made up, but
You can do whatever.
well, I can tell my story. That's fine. So I was in the Marine Corps in 1985 through 1991. Ronald Reagan was president when I joined the Marine Corps. Some people, when they join the military, that's kind of what they're going to do. They know that from the get-go. Me, I was a big football player, planning on going to college and doing all that stuff. And the Marine Corps sought me out pretty hardcore, no pun intended. And I avoided them. I mean, I'll be the first person to tell you, I ran like heck every time I'd see him. I took off just running. And Staff Sergeant Botcher was my recruiter. I'll never forget the guy. Very persistent individual. And boy, I tell you, he got me with the football thing too. He knocked on the door one day, the folks were gone, and I said, you know, my folks are gone. I got to clean it because I had a party the night before. And I said, I got to clean up the house before they get home. I just wanted to tell you that 87-yard interception you had in that game last year, boy, that was great. I'm like, oh, you saw that? Well, I could probably spare a couple of minutes. Come on inside. That was kind of how I got sucked into the Corps. I was in the delayed entry program for 11 months. And, you know, once you kind of commit to something, and I'm sort of that way, you know, I always tell people I'm not very good at being half-assed. I'm either full-ass or no-ass. So once I decided to go on the Marine Corps, I was Marine Corps shirts, and at one point I even shaved my head the whole 9 yards. And so speaking of the Air Force, my stepfather was in the Air Force. So 2 weeks before I'm ready to leave. Now, mind you, I've been in the delayed entry program for 11 months. Got all the Marine stuff, posters hanging in my wall and stuff. My stepfather decides to take me for a walk and says, so, join the Marine Corps, huh? Yes, sir. I'm even wearing a USMC sweatshirt and stuff. He says, you know, I was in the Air Force, right? I said, yes, sir, I'll go over that. He said, you know, the Air Force is easier, right? I said, well, yes, sir, I figured if I was going to go, I might as well go full in, you know. And it didn't dawn on me what he meant until one day I was stationed in 29 Palms, California.
Oh, 29. Oh.
I'm guarding an empty ammo dump. I got a shotgun and 3 rounds. I'm walking my post from flank to flank, kicking the sand down, thinking to myself, you know, I was in the Air Force, right? And speaking of Nellis, we did a deployment to Nellis. We were stationed there for a couple of weeks, and they put us in Air Force barracks, which was, talk about different. So as a Marine, we cleaned up after ourselves. I was working night shift at the time. I was in the aviation mechanic, so I worked on Hughes and Cobras. And somebody opens the door. Well, I'm sleeping this during the day, and my 3 roommates, of course, are all at work. And so I roll over to see who it is, and there's a female walking in. Now, when I was in the military, there was no co-ed barracks or stuff like that, especially the Marine Corps, right? Not that you want co-ed barracks with Marines, female Marines, right? But I roll over and I'm like, excuse me. And she goes, oh, I didn't realize anybody was in here. I'm like, well, obviously, who are you? She says, oh, I'm here to clean the room.
Oh.
Clean the room of what? Clean us out or whatever. And they had people that were cleaning them. Marines are, speaking of the Air Force again, we landed in Korea, and I want to say that was an Air Force base too. And when we landed in Korea, the pilot said, well, you know, Sergeant, we got some time, let's go get some chow. So I said, okay, cool. I said, Lance Corporal, come on, let's go get some chow. So we go walking over. Marines can be like trained dogs, so you know, sometimes if you just want to bark out a command, I may well do it, who knows. And what I mean by that is we're walking into the chow hall. Now the Air Force and the Navy, for the most part, had really nice stuff. And we go, God bless you, we go walk into the door, and I open the door, and we're about to walk in, and I stop the Lance Corporal. I'm like, whoa! And he's like, what is it, Sergeant? I go, it's carpet. We're enlisted Marines. We don't get carpet. So I'm looking, and I'm trying to motion. Of course, they've got nationals, so there's like Korean women working the counters and stuff. And I said, hey, where do we eat? And I'm kind of flashing my sergeant stripes. And she says, oh, you come in. I go, no, carpet, stripes, they don't go together, right? I'm not allowed in there, you know. She says, no, you come. I said, all right. I'm like, well, come on, you know, we're just dumb jarheads. That'll be our excuse. So we go in there, and you know, we're Marines. We're trained. We're like dogs. I pick up my tray, and she's just looking at me. She says, well, what do you want? I said, oh, well, I want chow. What do you got? She points to a menu. Yeah. She said, well, what do you want? And I'm like, oh, we are definitely not in the right place. So, well, we ate there. That was funny, because then, you know, in the Marine Corps, you get all your own stuff if there's stuff to be got. And so I'm like, where do we get the milk, or you guys have pop here? Because we didn't always get pop. She says, oh yeah, you tell me what you want. No, you show me where it's at. I'll get. No, we get it for you. They got it for us and everything. And then the plates. They had us leave the plates after we were done. I'm like, where's the scullery? In military, everything's got a name. Mm-hmm. Where's the scullery? Where's the dispensary, which is like the doctor's office or whatever. But so. Yeah, I had a really good time in the Marine Corps. My experience in the Marine Corps was good. Unfortunately, for those of us who were around back then, Reagan was awesome as a president. Loved serving under Reagan. Actually, George Herbert Walker Bush came and flew with my squadron because he had to get so many flight hours. So I never got super close to him. I was in one line of aircraft launching a Cobra, and when he was there, and he was over on the other side. I believe he flew a Cobra that day too, if I recall correctly. But yeah, I knew when he was probably going to be president because of how much everybody loved Reagan. Of course, Reagan turned out, and I just kind of knew the military was going to go south after that. So 6 years is what I did, which was kind of funny. You mentioned you hadn't been to war. You didn't miss much. I know when we all go in, it's kind of funny because you sort of transition. When I first went in, I think most of us that go in the military, we're prepared, right? It's why we're here, right? It's what we're training for. It's why I went through boot camp. It's why everybody's been yelling at me. I'm ready for this. Everybody's been taking it out on me. Now I want to take it out on somebody else. Unfortunately, when Saddam decided in August of '90 that it was time to take Kuwait, I was thinking about getting out because I was due to get out in June of '91. And so in late August, we were back in our time, for those of us, most of us here probably, a big thing back when we were in the military was this thing called OPSEC, which was short for Operation Security, which essentially meant you couldn't tell anybody anything. Nowadays, I see these things that say like cell phones for soldiers and stuff. I'm thinking, are you kidding me? How does OPSEC work with that? Or you got geo trackers and stuff on it. That wouldn't be, in our day, that wouldn't be allowed. And it was funny because I was living with a woman at the time I was stationed in Camp Pendleton, California. I was living off base. Finally, as a senior sergeant, I finally drew to be able to live out of the barracks, which was nice. And of course, it's on the news. Wait, they're talking about military, the U.S. possibly sent a military people there. Now, for those of us who were in, I had my 782 gear checked out, which, for those of us who don't know what that means, that's basically your combat gear. And so my girlfriend at the time, her and I had separate closets. And she's watching the TV, and of course, sometimes our significant others can get all kinds of confused, concerned or whatever. And so she's looking at the TV and opening my closet, getting ready to put stuff away. And I'm about to jump up and say, I'll put that away or whatever. And she says, well, there's no chance of you going, is there? And I said, there's always a chance. And just then my helmet came flying out of the closet, hit the floor, and boom, 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 boom. And of course I'm like, that doesn't mean anything! That doesn't mean anything! We gotta check it out twice a year and make sure it's still serviceable. So, that could be that. It could be that. Of course, long story short, I ended up over there. So C5s, did you get a chance to fly on a C5 at all while you're in? No. So it would hold 6 of our aircraft using Cobras. I have seen, I can't, somebody asked the question about tanks. I've seen a lot of stuff manifested on aircraft. Another cute little thing about Marines, right? We're trained dogs, and we're also we're always looking for a ride. So we either bum it from the Navy, that's why they're there, that we call them our taxi service, or, you know, in times of a real emergency, of course, we get lucky, we go first class in the Air Force
We
taxis.
dropped you guys off.
Absolutely, absolutely,
Parachute
absolutely.
out.
But I will tell you, and I'm sure it probably wasn't you at all, but not a lot of good experience with the Air Force. So one of the coldest days I ever experienced, we landed in Anchorage, Alaska. We were on our way to Okinawa, Japan, and the doggone aircraft broke down. So of course they said, you have to deplane the one C-5 and put all the stuff in the other C-5. So it was colder than bejesus, it was the middle of the night, and I'm in Anchorage, Alaska. We would move an aircraft, and then we would run inside, warm up for a couple minutes, and we would run back out and finish loading it up and all kinds of good stuff. So that was strike one. Strike two, so when I was on the rear party coming back from Desert Storm. So for those who don't know, you have usually an advanced party, you have what's called the main body, and then you have the rear body. So the advanced party is a small group of people who basically go there ahead of the main body, and they set things up, make sure everything's ready, and make sure you got, where are we gonna put up the tents, or what's our housing gonna be, where's the CB's gonna set up, you know, the bathrooms or whatever. So, and then of course the unlucky guys, depending on the situation, coming back, the unlucky people are the people that are on the rear party, because the advanced party leaves, which I don't believe we left Desert Storm with the advanced party. You had the main body, which was basically everybody, and then of course you had the rear body. So I got stuck in the rear body, and I remember arguing with Top at the time. And Top is a master sergeant, for those who don't know. Top is like a nickname for a master sergeant. And Top and I had a very good relationship. One time we were getting ready to deploy, I want to say we were going to 29 Palms, and I just met a wonderful woman, and I didn't want to spend any time away from her, because, you know, when you're young and you first meet somebody, there's a good chance that unless things mature real quickly, that you won't see them again. So I didn't want that to happen. So I brought Top a note that said, "Dear Top, please excuse Steve from this deployment, as I am feeling too well to attend right now. Signed, my mother." In which case he said, "Very funny, Sergeant Nemeth, get on the bus." So as they're getting ready to come back, now mind you, I'm short. So for us military guys, short means I don't have a whole lot of time left in the military. I'm about to get out soon, right? So we're talking, this is April-ish, March, April of 91. And so I'm in June, I'm getting out. But oh, by the way, I got 2 months of leave too, so I'm gonna take terminal leave. So I'm April-ish, I'm out of here. So I'm really short. And so I'm like, "Yeah, Tom, you can't keep me on the rear party. I gotta go back main body." And he says, "No," he says, "you know, we got a lot of married guys who want to get home to their wives." And I said, "Well, I'm living with somebody." So I mean, California law, essentially, that's common law. I mean, it's like we're married. He says, "Listen, I need somebody I can trust to make sure all my aircraft get back." And I said, "I appreciate your situation, Tom, but I'm just a sergeant. I'm an E5. You need a staff NCO to be able to sign for all that gear. You're a jerk." And he says, "That's why I'm leaving you the gunny." And we have this gunny that he was a grunt who had, which is the infantry guy, who had came to the squadron, and he was going to finish out his career in the squadron. So he was one of those guys that had the rank but not the experience with us. So I got stuck with Gunny. So I thought, so me being the smart guy, Gunny says, "Well, Nemeth, what do you think we should do?" I said, "Well, Gunny, we got 4 birds to load. We were bringing back 24 of our Hughes and Cobras. We had 4 C4s. And I said, "Well, I think we should divide up the GSE gear, which is ground support equipment gear. We'll kind of keep the 2 sticks together. All 4 of us are probably all going to fly in together. It's not going to be a big deal. But just to be on the safe time, I'm going to prepare for the worst, hope for the best kind of a guy, right?" So I said, one of us should probably go first to make sure if we need to set something up, like getting tugs or something to get off of the aircraft, that we can do that. Then, of course, somebody needs to be back to make sure everybody makes it." So he says, "Well, you've done a pretty good job of getting everything squared away." He says, "Why don't you go first?" And I said, "Gunny, I like the way you're thinking. I like the way you're thinking, Gunny. I'll get everything set up, don't you worry about it." So we get on the C5, and we're in Jebel Air Base in Saudi Arabia. The Desert Storm is over, we're on our way home.
Yeah.
Super excited. Get in the aircraft. Now, another thing about a C5, for nobody that's been on them, you're on an aircraft that has no windows. That's the first thing. So you don't know anything. Second thing, all the seats are going the other direction. So you're flying backwards. So we got in the aircraft and we could feel it taxiing, so we're getting all excited. The guys are cheering. And we kind of stopped for a while. Then we taxi some more. They're getting excited or cheering. I'm like, wait a minute. We're not picking up speed. Something's not right. So next thing you know, you hear other aircraft. Loadmaster finally walks out. I said, hey, we're the first stick. Why did I just hear 3 aircraft take off? He says, oh, we're having some issues. What kind of issues? I got a plane full of aviation mechanics. We can fix issues, man. Let's go. We're supposed to be out of here. So like 20 minutes, we're sitting in this doggone aircraft, not sure if we're flying off or not. We finally leave. We land in Spain. Of course, I see Gunny. Hey, Nemeth, looks like you went from 1 to 4. Thanks, Gunny. Yeah, good to see you, buddy. So that was strike 2. Then we landed in Spain. Because we were delayed, our crew dated. So our crew can only fly for 12 hours. Then they got to get 12 hours of sleep. Because we were in Spain with a crew, they didn't have another crew, so that crew had to wait for 12 hours. So we got stuck in Spain, which is neither here nor there. But so coming back, I will say one of the interesting things about bringing the boys back was we flew into Dover, Delaware. And everybody, we're flying out of Spain. It was nice to get into Spain. USO had us set up with some showers. We had what we call bag nasties. Those of us that were in the military. They're like little sack lunches that the USO puts together for you, and they sit in a box probably somewhere for a period of time. By the time you get them, they're pretty nasty, but at least they're not, MREs or anything else. So we landed in Dover. I was kind of expecting what we saw in Spain, to be honest with you. And everybody was all excited, oh, we're back in the United States, which was kind of a big deal. And for us, the last war before us was Vietnam. And when you're coming home from that situation, everybody's talking about, man, I can't wait to get home and eat a pizza. I can't wait to get home and go bowling. I can't wait. Everybody's always got these things.
Sure they are.
And,
you know what they were counting on the one for.
That's what I was thinking. But anyway, so we landed over, and I'm like, and they're all excited. And I said, well, boys, keep in mind, the last thing that happened was Vietnam. Those boys didn't come home to.
Well, there's one in between.
Between us and
That's Grenada. That was
well, yeah, the Falkland Islands too. Anyway, not talking about the short little ones. But I will say for those folks, I will never forget that time. We're on the bus, we're riding, and I tell you, Dover, you talk about C5s. I had no idea we had that many in like the entire fleet. There was a lot of aircraft, a lot of C5s. C-141s. They had Dover just had a lot of them, and we were coming into the hangar, and I was very concerned. I'm kind of thinking we're going to see Spain all over again, cotton, some USO stuff, and they had of course we had those half circle hangars, the big hangars, and the doors were kind of open a little bit. I could see that as we were pulling out. Didn't really know what to expect, and. We were on this blue school, kind of old-fashioned school bus, And as we pulled up in front of the door, I could see that they had made like a makeshift glass door. And so, the guys were getting off, and I was the last one to get off the bus, and I could hear people inside. And I really didn't know what to expect. This wasn't even our home base. We were stopping in Dover, getting ready to go to El Toro next. And those people, I tell you, it still kind of chokes me up to this day. There was people from that town there that came out to greet us and to thank us. And I remember we were walking through the door, and the song "Proud to Be an American" came on, and every time I hear that song now, it kind of throws me back to that day. And just to see the look on those boys' face when the people welcomed us home. And they were just so, I didn't know any of them. None of us knew any of them. None of us were from there. These were people, every time a bird would land there, these people got together and welcomed us home. And it was just, I had people asking me for autographs. I'm like, listen, I didn't do anything, you know. And it was special. But the flip side of that was, so then we get on the bird to fly back to El Toro. And I told the guys, I said, listen, what you just experienced, that's America at its best. We're going to California now, and no offense, but you're gonna probably see America at its worst. We landed in El Toro, and it was almost like Jebel again. We're sitting in the aircraft, and they wouldn't let us out. And so I called the loadmaster over, and I said, listen, what's going on? And he said, well, apparently they didn't know we were coming. And I said, yeah, welcome to the military. And I hurried up and away. I said, listen, you don't want to be here. And in El Toro, it wasn't a big enough place for them to put the C5s anywhere. So the two C5s were sitting side by side to each other. And I said, listen, you need to give me a tug, and I'll deplane these aircraft, and you guys can get out of here. I'll worry about how to get my birds back home. And he says, so he leaves, and he comes back to me, and he says, well, we can't do that on the word of the sergeant. And I said, you need to open that door. So then I get out, and I walk to the tower, and I said, I need a phone. I need to call the officer of the day in Camp Pendleton, California. And I got some lieutenant on the phone, and he's like, yeah, Lieutenant, whatever. And I go, who? Because it wasn't even the guy with our squadron over in Desert Storm. It was some guy we just picked up. And I said, listen, you need to wake the old man up, and you need to tell him Sergeant Nemeth is stranded in El Toro. He wants a ride home now. And he says, oh, I'm sorry, Sergeant, I'm not waking. I said, listen, son, you tell the old man that you left Sergeant Nemeth stranded in El Toro, California with 12 of his aircraft, and you see how you feel tomorrow morning. And the next thing I know, they got tugs coming out to us. We're deplaning the C5, and well, they brought us some more bag nasties. And I'm like, yeah, I think we can hold off till we get back to Pendleton. That was funny because then we got to our own squadron, our hangar. You could see, of course, we're the rear party, so we walk in. You can see the streamers and all the confetti and stuff on the ground. Some chairs kind of strewn about or whatever. The old man, I did talk to the old man on the phone. The old man is the commanding officer. And he said, you know, Sergeant Nemeth, tell your boys you got a 96-hour pass, which is 4 days off. So I told the boys, I said, the old man said, welcome home. You got 96 hours. Spend them with your family, and we'll see you Monday morning.
So you get the 96, or did you get the 9 or 6?
Yeah, no, we actually did get the 96. I was short at that point, so I said, listen, you got 96, don't answer the phone for anybody. If anybody has anything to say about it, tell Sergeant Nemeth to do it. But, so anyway, of course, being back in Michigan, it's a lot nicer too. Kind of reminds me a lot more of being in Dover rather. So, you know, every time people thank me for my service, I always think to myself, I can never say it because nobody understands the story, but now you folks would. Somebody says, thank you for your service, and I think to myself, thank you for not being California. All right. Questions, anyone? All right, I appreciate all your time, folks. Thank you.